We have one remaining with the individual, and he's not going to let her leave the aircraft at this time.
He made me feel very sure that we had a very real and horrifying threat.
We don't know who he was, where he came from, or where he went.
We're here, we're live. All right, so here's what we're going to do. Folks, the game is, what we're going to do is we are going to flip a coin to start this thing. And I guess the loser of the coin toss has to defend, I guess, it has to like make a case for whatever suspect I pull out of my Northwest Orient stewardess bag here. Oh God, there's all Marty's books, but yes, so I have a Northwest Orient bag here and I have all these suspects in here. So the loser of the coin toss has to defend whoever the person is, okay? Has to defend them. All right, so Marty, your camera flipped. I mean, we're looking at your books here, so yeah, you're back. Okay, we saw like the back end of whatever you're looking at. So, okay, yeah, the video keeps freezing. Well, I'm not. I mean, is my video keep freezing or what? Or is it? Well, whatever. Marty, your internet probably stinks on ice, but it's okay. Anyway, so all right. So anyway,
I'm in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, I know. We'll figure it out. So we're gonna flip a coin here. Oh, I'm freezing. Maybe it's just you. I mean, I think I've got good stuff here. Anyway, whatever. I don't care. I mean, this freaking Facebook Live. Anyway, see, Marty's clear. All right, so we're gonna flip a coin here, and whoever loses the coin toss basically has to defend the suspect, and then the next suspect we go to, it flips. So we just go back and forth. So I'll defend, then you defend, then we defend. All right. So Brian is freezing a little bit. Well, of course. God damn it. You know, of course. Hey, man, I have no idea what the hell's going on. So if I'm freezing, the video's all good, whatever. Hell, let's go. All right. So I'm going to flip a coin. Marty, you call it.
Heads.
Heads. Okay. All right. So it is that heads? Yeah, that's tails. So I'm the loser. So I have to defend the first person who we draw. So let's get on. Let's get on here. So the first person that we're going to draw out of the hat here that I have to defend. Let's see. It's okay. Vincent Peterson. Okay. Okay.
How many fingers does he have?
Well, it's 9.5 fingers.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So, so Vincent Peterson, basically, I mean, I guess he's tall. He's a man. Okay. So Vincent Peterson was about 50 years old. He's about the right age, I'd say. If you believe in the tie, I mean, look, here's the thing about the tie is that it's evidence. I mean, it is evidence. I mean, you know, there's no doubt about it. I know, Marty, you agree with it too. It's evidence, right? I mean, there's no, you know, we just have to, you know, figure out what it means. I mean, I'm not a thrift store person. I don't think you would get that sort of thing at a thrift store, especially with the tie clip already on it. It didn't sit well with me. So, and I think it's a little too on the nose that the tie has aviation links, right? And we're dealing with an aviation type of crime. I think that means something to me. But anyway, Vincent Peterson, how would I defend Vincent Peterson? Okay, so man, okay, I guess you could say, I mean, shoot, you're gonna have a lot easier time on this one. I don't really shoot. Yeah, homely. He's homely. He wasn't a good-looking guy. He knew airplanes, I guess, because he worked for Boeing. Oh shit. God. Okay, he's not swarthy. No, he's not. Okay, yeah. So he's a man. He was about 50 years old, and he sort of had a link to the tie. Okay, that's all I can do on Vince. You would go. Your turn.
Well, no, obviously he's too tall, the 9.5 fingers thing. But I would want to, because it's the tie evidence. Maybe we should focus on that. In that, I think it's very unlikely that the tie owner is a metallurgist. It doesn't make sense to me. I would expect somebody like down the hierarchy, maybe sales staff, manager, office administrator, who is working with this stuff, not the top echelon guys who are making a good living. It doesn't make sense.
Okay. So yeah, and look, I mean, that's a problem. I mean, I'm sure we'll draw for it out eventually, but like, yeah, I mean, that is a problem with these metallurgists is, I mean, these guys weren't poor. And again, I mean, if I'm fired, I mean, Eric uses the term pink slip in hand a lot, man. If I'm fired, I'm not committing a capital crime. I'm getting another job, or I'm dealing with it. I mean, it's, I mean, and again, the problem is there's no evidence. We have no evidence that there were any layoffs at Crucible, like none. Like, I mean, we've looked for evidence. There's no evidence because Crucible had their hands in not just in titanium, but in just steel for building everything. I mean, it wasn't just, the titanium things. Whereas, a company like, for example, like Verdal worked for a titanium company, essentially. That's a little different. I mean, that, his business was shut down, but there's no evidence at all. I agree that, yeah. So I like what you're saying about him being a lower echelon. I like middle management sort of, that makes kind of sense. I don't know. So, okay. Yeah. Vince Peterson, let's move on. All right. So now it's your turn to defend someone. All right, who we got here? Who we got? Digging. Who we got? Oh, no. Good luck, homie. You got Barb Dayton there. All right, so go. Make a case for Barb Dayton.
This is easy because we have a confession. We have somebody linked to the crime who lived in the area. She's, in her male persona, she's reminiscent of the sketch. She had the aviation knowledge, like the PPL that we're looking for. And her background in the Merchant Marines would give her the ability to comfortably, connect the money to her harness. And she was a daredevil. So it's not out of her character.
Yeah. Okay.
That's my case. Is that she fits psychologically, I think, the kind of, maybe not the transgender part, but definitely the daredevil, kind of annoyed with society part.
Okay. I can definitely feel that. Okay. So the problem for me with Barb, is that, Barb is 5'7", and that is just way too small. I don't know what universe you'd have to exist in for a 5'7" person to be mistaken for 6'1" or 6 foot tall. That's just not, I mean, again, Tina Mucklow is 5'8". So, I mean, Cooper's not, I mean, obviously if she felt Cooper was taller than her, which she did, because she said 5'10" to 6 feet tall, then, she's looking up at Cooper, when she's talking to him. What's that?
She could have worn lifts. She could have worn heavy boots.
Well,
added a couple of inches.
But Barb's 5'7", blue eyes, blonde hair. Now, again, master of disguise, I guess you could say. But the problem with Barb is just there's no evidence. And if you read the book, I mean, which I have, it's full of errors. I mean, there's a lot of, it's not Recca bad. It's not that sort of level of just garbage. But it's, I believe Barb, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe Barb's narrative is that she jumped in Oregon, right?
Further south.
Yeah, further south. I mean, south of the river for sure. And now again, that would have been a smarter place to jump, as we all know. That's the Willamette Valley would be a good place to jump, for sure. So let's see. So yeah, I would say that Barb is just not. I do agree. Look, I mean, the daredevil persona, and I believe Barb did have skydiving experience recreationally. That's my understanding. And Barb was a pilot, which, as your dad can attest, there is decent cause to believe that Cooper was a pilot. I mean, I think you know, I mean, I've talked to Mac about that, McNally about it, and I've said, you know, would you know that flaps and gear down create drag? And he just said no. That I don't know. He said Mac was on a plane for 2,000 hours with the military, and he said all he knew about flaps was that they were used on takeoff and landing. He had no idea what other function they would have to create drag, right? So, I mean, that does require some better knowledge, and so I do think the pilot thing, you know, certainly makes sense. So, okay, Barb. All right, so let's see who we got. All right, all right. So it's my turn to defend now. No, you're kidding me. Okay. Cue the laugh track, people. Richard Floyd McCoy. That's geez. It's not like I didn't just write 6,000 words on why Richard McCoy is not D.B. Cooper. Yes, folks, I devoted an entire chapter in my book to why McCoy is not Cooper. Okay, to make the case for McCoy. Well, I mean, honestly, the fact that he did it matters. The fact that he had the stones to do it in the first place, right? I mean, that counts for something. He wore makeup the second time, or if okay, well, look, how about this? Despite their best efforts, Richard McCoy's location is actually not known on that night. Okay, that is, I mean, you know, again, I just wrote 6,000 words on the guy, you know, saying why he's not Cooper, and that's a missing part of it. Is they could never produce the kill shot that put him somewhere, you know, that day. Now the problem is the class he took that morning. We think he took a class that morning, but we're not sure, you know, if he was there or not. But so the case for McCoy would be that he's done it before. He did look older, but yeah, I'm defending the guy, so I don't want to, you know, say why he's not. But he had the knowledge. Okay, so McCoy was a daredevil. He did it before. He was a pilot. I believe he had a private pilot's license. I'm not sure about that. Actually, I think he did. He definitely flew choppers for sure, but I think he also flew planes too. So he had that. He's actually the right size. I mean, he's 5'10". He's 5'10". He was balding. He needed money for sure. Okay, so yeah, I mean, okay, the case would be that he needed money. He had the knowledge, he had the means, he had the motive, opportunity, I guess. Knowledge. I mean, he looks like a sketch, I guess, vaguely. I mean, enough, I would say. Okay. Yeah, so your turn, go. Attack McCoy.
So how did he, okay, so we know the witnesses all said no. We know that he didn't have money to do anything with. How did he get to the airport? How did he get to PDX?
That's a good, yeah. I guess.
How did he get back? How did he get back by 10 a.m. the next day?
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, look, he is seen on his couch by a foreign exchange student who shows up. McCoy was a decent guy, despite being a terrorist, I guess. But, you know, McCoy invited
Best terrorist in America.
I think he was Filipino. He invited a Filipino student to come to his house for Thanksgiving dinner because he didn't have anybody to spend Thanksgiving with. So, and he reported that he got there about 10 a.m. and McCoy's sitting there on the couch. And he got up and said, "Hey, how you doing?" And they went and made Thanksgiving lunch, right? So we have that. Yeah, you're right on that. But yeah, and I agree with you. I mean, the main thing is I don't know how you can have a suspect that all 10 eyewitnesses say is not the guy, right? That's hard to overcome, especially when McCoy's witnesses all said it was him, even though McCoy was wearing makeup, you know, and all kinds of crap, had a wig or whatever, you know. those witnesses still picked McCoy out of a lineup despite the fact he was wearing makeup. Yeah, again, we've gone over McCoy to death, and I know you and I are probably, what's funny about this conversation is that you and I are probably the most well-versed two people on the planet to attack McCoy. I think we've done the most research on that.
We know how much money was in his checking account.
Yeah.
We knew how much gas was in his pocket.
Yeah, we know. And I mean, I guess the argument, I guess
Grider's
argument is that I guess that he lost the money, right? That is he jumped over the Columbia and lost it or something. Which, again, McCoy was smart enough to bring a bag that clipped onto his harness, right? So that was a smart move on his part. And Rob Heady did the same thing too. So both of our skydivers did that, and smoking too. I mean, there's no evidence he ever smoked. There's no evidence he ever drank in his life. I mean, I think he did like to gamble, perhaps, which, I suppose that's against the Mormon creed, I guess. But yeah, McCoy's been gone over to death, and there is no chance. I mean, there's no universe where McCoy is Cooper. Like, there's just not.
My big problem is that the McCoy people never put their narrative within the constraints of where we know McCoy was. So he's got to be home at 10. He could be gone that day, but he's got to be able to get to PDX. And they have to expand it, by 3 or 4 days to get it to work. And that's what's frustrating, is we know facts and they can't fit the story right into the facts.
Yeah. They've never
can create a fictional narrative that works. They just don't.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, they don't even try, really. I mean, there's no, but yeah, because how can you be? I mean, how can you? I don't know. I mean, look, like Washington, Portland is far away from Utah. I mean, I know it's all the the western states here, but it's still a long freaking way. And how does he get back? I mean, I don't think you can drive from Portland to Salt Lake City or Provo in 8 hours or whatever. I mean, 10 hours, maybe you can. I don't know. I mean, I guess you probably could. I mean, I don't know. I mean, back then, probably not. I don't know.
I think it's 14 hours.
Oh, so I've
looked at it.
So you've looked that up before?
Yeah. It's 14 or 16. I can't remember exactly. He has just enough time to do it, but he has to steal a car or rent one.
Yeah, he has to steal a car and not have any unforeseen things come up to delay him. He's got to be kicking ass all the way to,
Like, he doesn't know where he is. That's the thing. He has no clue where he lands, and he has to extricate himself, and he has like a half an hour leeway to get that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and I mean, that's the thing about him is that, I mean, look at how detailed his hijacking was with, the coordinates. I mean, he knew exactly where he was when he jumped. Cooper, I mean, people can have all the conspiracy theories they want about what was in the bag and whatever, but folks, Cooper had no way of knowing where he was. Just period. I mean, he didn't even tell them what speed to fly at. People think it was 200 miles an hour. He never said that. Right. I mean, they could have been flying 250 miles an hour, and by the time he looks up, they're in Oregon, right? I mean, we just don't know. We think that his, by having the flaps down and the gear down, certainly that would have limited how fast they could fly. And I think he knew that, but he still didn't specify an exact speed. And again, here we go, freaking flight path. But, Victor 23 is what, 8 miles wide,
yeah.
Right? So even if he engineered a way to, even if he knew they were going down Victor 23, if he engineered it that way, it's still 8 miles wide. He didn't know where they were going to be, within Victor 23. And I mean, so now it's just, he was winging it the same way Mac winged it, and the same way that Hinman winged it, and LaPointe winged it. And those guys, Hinman winged it and got away, and Mac winged it and got away temporarily. Yeah. So there's no, reason to think that Cooper wasn't the same way. So let's move on. So, okay, it's your turn to defend. And who do we got? Okay. I mean, this isn't bad. Not bad. Gossett. Okay. William Gossett. That's not too hard, I guess, for you. Go ahead.
No, I mean, he had the background we're looking for. You know, he knew parachutes. He had the military training. We have a suspect with an actual confession, who suggested it was him. He was in the area. There's a lot going on. I mean, he looks like this. If you look at my age progressed Cooper face app photos, he looks just like it.
Yeah.
It's almost a perfect match.
Yeah. No, Gossett's I mean, I guess the problem with Gossett is that just his personality seems, you know, a little loopy to be, a little loopy to be Cooper, a little loudmouth to be Cooper. I mean, again, I don't know, maybe, but if DB Cooper became a freaking, priest who performed exorcisms, then I'm a monkey's uncle, I guess, because I don't see that at all.
But there are entities, disincarnate entities, that once belonged to people living on this temporal plane. And at the time of death, for whatever reason, they elected to remain on this plane, and they have elected not to go over to the other side.
But no, Gossett, I mean, look, the thing about Gossett is, Gossett was interesting. He was in the Air Force, he was in the Marines, and he was in the Army. I've never heard of anybody being in three branches of the military. That's crazy. And he did have paratrooper training. Gossett had the skill set, no doubt about it. I mean, and he looks enough like the sketch for sure. Now, I think it's kind of the William J. Smith thing that I think the hairline, people, when you put when you put a picture of Gossett up against Cooper, especially the Carey sketch, people see the hairline. It looks perfect. It's a perfect match. And it's the same way with William J. Smith. The hairline looks perfect. But if you put like a piece of paper over the hair and look at their other features, not so much. Gossett has like no eyebrows. I don't know what his deal was. He had like no eyebrows. I don't know if he shaved his eye. I mean, he has no eyebrows. Cooper seems to have pretty defined eyebrows. Gossett does have the turkey neck though. I mean, look, Gossett is a B tier suspect, right? I mean, I would put Gossett on B tier. I mean, he's not Cooper, I don't think. But I mean, you could do a lot worse than Gossett.
No, and really his problem is his confession doesn't make sense. Where he landed and what he did with the money when we know that he lost the money.
Yeah, if I recall,
that's a big problem with Gossett.
He's a Tina Bar landing guy, right?
Well, or Oregon, that he got pushed to the west, I think is what the story is, and landed.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Landed out there.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it is. He is an Oregon guy, and I mean, a lot of the stuff about the lockbox and him telling his kids this stuff. I mean, what a real jerk to tell your sons that, if you're not Cooper, right? I mean, you've got a son now. I mean, that would be a kind of a shitty thing to remember me by, is that I lied to you about being DB Cooper. And if you listen to Greg, his son, he's earnest. He thinks his dad was Cooper. He believes it, and he's not. And Greg Gossett's not a kook. I mean, we've got some people who are tied to Cooper suspects who are kooks. I mean, Joe Weber, with respect to Joe Weber was a kook. I think that some of the Walter Recca people are kooks. But Greg Gossett is a really solid guy, it seems like. But now Gossett, I mean, Gossett, I mean, I don't know, maybe. Well, okay, how about that? Well, I was going to say that Gossett's DNA was tested and eliminated, but again, the DNA is not enough for me to eliminate a suspect. Would you agree?
Right, yeah, I agree, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the DNA that we've got we have 3 partial profiles that we don't, I mean, again, the tie was passed around mean, they put the tie in a freaking envelope and mailed it to across the country several times, and nobody who ever handled it wore gloves or was cognizant of not spitting on it or whatever, you know. So I don't trust the DNA. He was tested against Tom K's DNA. No. With all due respect, you're a kook. I'm a kook. Joe, you're a kook. He was tested against Tom K's DNA. No. The Tom K DNA that he vacuumed off of Cooper's tie, that's a long story. It's kind of it's never been analyzed, I guess. Okay. It costs a lot of money to do that. So no. But no, Gossett's a solid B tier suspect. I can attack him on just his personality, but again, I mean, we don't know what Cooper's personality is. I mean, you know, I don't know how you or I would behave about, you know, when we're committing a hijacking.
It's frustrating because Cooper seems very grounded. He's very comfortable, you know, delegating tasks. He's very comfortable committing the crime, smoking cigarettes and drinking, but he's not, I mean, he's still committed a capital crime, an act of terror, and doing a very dangerous job. So there's something wrong, right? Maybe a little bit. I don't know.
No, Cooper.
It's a weird thing to me.
It is strange, you know, because Brendan Kerner did a Vortex episode. Brendan Kerner, for those who don't know, is the guy, he wrote The Skies Belong to Us, which is a book about the Roger Holder and what's her name? Kathy Kirko hijacking, okay, where they went to Algiers. And, you know, he spent a lot of time researching hijackers. And he got on Darren's podcast and said a lot of, basically said that he feels like Cooper was insane. You know, kind of, you know, we have, you know, a lot of us when we first get into the Cooper case have an image of almost like a lovable rogue, a Han Solo type, you know, individual, right?
Yeah.
But man, when you really, you know, my study of the copycats, I've had to delve into that world a lot. And none of these people, none of them, like literally none of them have all their marbles. With respect to Marty McNally, my good friend, Marty will admit Marty was suffering from PTSD and other things. I mean,
yeah.
That is mental illness too. So like McCoy, Heedy, LaPointe, Mac, these guys were suffering from PTSD from their military experience. But so that is a mental illness. So Cooper had mental illness to some degree. He had to. Just I can't fathom him not having mental illness of some sort. But his behavior, though, suggests that he had control of it, or I don't know. It's almost like earlier today I was watching No Country for Old Men, and I was reading up on the trivia on the IMDb, and it mentioned how something like 200 psychologists watched like 400 movies with supposed psychopaths in them. And they said that Anton Chigurh, the main character, the bad guy in that movie, is the best, you know, is the best movie representation of a psychopath that's ever been on film. Okay. And, you know, if you watch and if you look at Cooper, he is very much like maybe an Anton Chigurh a little bit. He's very calm and just very, you know, it's almost like he doesn't care. Or, I mean, again, you know, when he gets the money, his personality does change a little bit. I mean, for sure. But yeah, so he's got mental illness. So
one of the things that we did, my dad and I, when we started our investigation, was we found someone who was definitely not Cooper, who we knew at the time, 1971, was not D.B. Cooper. And we tried to make connections between the Cooper case and him, you know, and this individual was someone who had gone through jump training, had military experience, was a pilot, and knew some Boeing aircraft, and in particular knew kind of the ins and outs of aviation. And didn't really look like the sketch, was a little too tall, had the slim build, maybe too young, full head of hair. That individual was my dad. But you can make, so you're like, you create a score, like he's about 60%, 65%.
Yeah.
And if somebody doesn't match that, you get rid of them. So that's, I like, Dave obviously was born,
Yes.
he
Post
was
hijacking.
a few years old at the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, my dad was in Thailand, and my dad was 24, 25 years old. But he would have been other than the age, was a decent suspect. So I like to eliminate people based on that. But it's also illustrative of the fact that you can create false connections to the case with pretty much any individual. So you have to be careful about that.
Yeah, that's a brilliant thing that you did by doing that with your father. Is you're basically creating a control to base, your testing on. And I know y'all set up a you had like a 70 factor test or something like that. Is that right? I mean, how many points did y'all have?
It was I think 30.
Okay, 30.
I haven't looked at it. Yeah, that spreadsheet goes back about 10 years now. But yeah, about 30 points that we were looking at.
Who scored the highest of the known suspects on that? Just curious.
That was Sheridan Peterson, but I haven't looked at Voral or Peterson or any new suspects. But Sheridan Peterson scored best, and I can't remember who was up there. I think Gossett actually was second or third. Yeah. Yeah,
Gossett. I mean, again, we go back to Gossett. I mean, I do not believe he's Cooper at all. I don't like Gossett has some things about his face that don't match what I think Cooper looked like. But I don't know. But no, Peterson. I mean, look, well, I'm sure Peterson. We'll get to Peterson. So okay, Dave, that was a little fun for you, Dave. All right, so your turn to defend. Let's see. We've got for you. What? I'm an idiot. I keep putting the names back in the bag. Okay, that was Barb Dayton again. All right, you've got Joseph Lakiage. All right.
Oh no. This was the one that I did a screen test for one of those shows on the History Channel, and the first thing they asked me about was Lakiage, and of course I didn't take that seriously to begin with, so I was like, he's just a made up suspect. Lakiage he's the one that's 58 November, right? The Grudge connection, Bill Rollins.
Yeah, Lakiage is the one whose daughter was killed in the hijacking by the FBI.
By the FBI. So I think the claim is there's a Thai connection. I'm not sure how good that Thai connection is, but he'd at least have, like, from the Thai, we expect it to be in an industrial setting. So I think he meets that.
Yeah, he's 50 years old in 71, exactly. So he's the right age, but
yeah. And I haven't even seen a good photo of him, so I don't know how close he is to the sketch.
He's not bad. I mean, he's not bad. So yeah, Lakiage is not one of your. Like you said, Lakiage is a newer suspect, sort of ish. He's not in your book, I don't think. So, yeah. So the attack on Lakiage, I don't like. What's that?
I don't like any grudge suspect at all. I think that the grudge line was just a line.
Yep.
But if you're looking for a grudge suspect, having your daughter murdered by the FBI probably is up there.
Yeah. I mean, okay. So the issue with that is that, so Joe Lakiage's daughter was, just for those who don't know, so she was going through kind of a divorce from her husband, and he basically kidnapped her at gunpoint on a Cessna type plane, and ended up holding her at gunpoint. And she was trying to talk him down, and everyone was trying to talk them down. And the FBI basically shot out their tires and ended up shooting a few rounds at the airplane. And he got scared or unnerved or something, and ended up shooting the pilot and shooting her, and then shooting himself. And she left, the daughter left a 1-year-old child who Joe raised as his own. Okay. So if you I'm Facebook. I know Susan Lakiage is her name. I mean, her father was Joe Lakiage. Okay, that's who raised her from 1 year old, right? I mean, this guy would have no reason to abandon his 1 year old granddaughter, who had just lost both their parents, and go do something crazy like that. He was 50 years old, but there's photos of him. He retired a major from the Army. And there's a photo of him as a major, and he has no jump wings. He was in the infantry. He was solely in the infantry for his career. So he's not wearing jump wings. So I don't think he had any parachute experience. And the thing is, how are you getting back at the FBI by hijacking a plane, and jumping out with somebody else's money? I mean, like you know what I'm saying? Like I mean, how are you punishing them? Like you're saying, come catch me. I mean, it's like, if you had a grudge against, I mean, you'd go blow up a federal building or something if you had a grudge with the FBI, right? I mean, bad connection, bad thing to say, but seriously though, that's what you do. You don't hijack a Northwest Orient plane when you live in. He's from Nashville, or Clarksville, which is roughly around there. But no, Lakiage worked in electronics, so I think there was the ray tubes. When we were all on the ray tube type stuff. How did he become a suspect? Is what Joe Holiday says. He became a suspect through Bill Wallens. Yeah. I like Bill. But Bill Rollins is suspect. The most bizarre cover of a Cooper book you'll ever see. I can only assume that he drew it himself, because it's got like, you know what I'm saying? It's got like it's got a rainbow and like the Golden Brick Road. And
it's fantastic.
Yeah. It's almost like I almost want to like frame it. It's like so insane. It's so cool. Like it's bizarre, but Lakiage just has no. People say he has a motive, but he doesn't have a motive. And here's the thing too: if your daughter was killed during a hijacking, are you gonna go terrorize other people's daughters? Right?
I mean, I'm not.
I know you. I'm just saying, like, I don't.
I'm not saying
I do that. That's not.
You're the one who thinks Cooper's crazy, so
well, that's true.
Maybe.
I mean, that's true. I do think Cooper's crazy. So, okay, so let's see. My turn to defend somebody. Okay. I knew this was going to happen. The stupid form. I knew. Okay. Hardy har, everybody. Okay. Walter Pekka. Yes, his name was Pekka, people, not Rekka. He changed his name to Rekka from Pekka. So he was the OG Pekka head, was Walter Rekka. So, okay, so, Walter Rekka, despite the obvious flaws with Rekka makes sense as far as like his personality. I mean, Rekka was a skydiving criminal. Okay, so he was overqualified to be Cooper, honestly, as a skydiver. But Rekka, he was a criminal. He had a conviction for burglary. He was not a good person by all accounts. Rekka, look, if Rekka looked more, if we subtract his ridiculous confession, and if he looked a little more like Cooper, then it's kind of weird when you actually look at, Rekka has what you want in Cooper, really. A guy who's a little weird, a guy who is a skydiver, a guy who has military experience, a guy who was a legitimate criminal, okay, was not afraid of going to prison, okay, but his age, I'm pretty sure Rekka was 38, which is on the low end of Cooper, but it's manageable. I have a problem going below 35, I would say. And I do think about Cooper's age, just a sidebar here. I think that men from age like 35 to like 55 are hard to tell. I think there's, especially if you're wearing sunglasses, I think that there is wiggle room there. Once you get past 35, it's kind of hard to tell age. But yeah, Rekka, his age is fine. Rekka was 5'10", so his height is fine. So yeah, so okay. This is the ultimate. This is the ultimate fastball down the middle. Okay, that you have to knock out of the park here because it's Walter Rekka. Kill Rekka, please.
You didn't you say no discussions about the flight path?
Screw that. Let's talk about it.
Okay, all right. How do you get to Clay Elm?
You don't.
They have a witness. Puts him in Clay Elm that night. How does he get there?
How
does he get there within like 45 minutes of landing?
A wormhole.
You know, in Vancouver.
It's a wormhole. It's Star Trek. You know, it was a Klingon wormhole, I guess. No, Rekka's just stupid. Just continue bashing Rekka, please.
I spent most of this week trying to come up with novel ways of defending Rekka because I assumed I would lose this.
Oh.
So, like, what door was he going to jump out of? How did he know that he could jump out of this aircraft?
Yeah, Rekka. Okay, so for those who don't know, the tie. I would advise people to go. It's online. I forget the podcast, but there is. I forget the title of the podcast, but you can hear. It's free. You can listen. I mean, I actually paid $10 to hear his stupid confession, like an idiot. But it is free though now, so you can go listen to Rekka himself. He does have a good voice for Cooper. I'll say that. His voice sounds like what you'd want for Cooper. Kind of a Midwestern. He's a little northern though. He's a little Minnesota. He's got a bit of that Minnesota. You're from up there. I mean, you're not from that area precisely, but you live up there. So like, does that have a name that, oh, don't you know, like that sort of, is there a name for that?
No. Normal.
Okay. Well, see, because I mean, as a Southerner, I have a drawl, right? What is that called?
Yeah.
Yankee, I guess. Just yeah.
You know what? You've got me. It's not my area of expertise.
Well, Rekka has that.
Linguistics.
If you listen to Rekka's confession, Rekka says that he was going to jump out the side door of the jet, and that Tina Mucklow said, "Hey, you should jump out the back. It's easier." Like, so why did he even hijack a 727? Right? I mean, if he didn't know what it was, what's the point of hijacking that plane? Of course, they have Clay Elum. Now, what do you think about what's his name, Ozymandias, or the witness? I mean, what do you think? What do you think about that?
No, I don't know how you can put a date on it. Like, he may have seen Rekka at some point over that, you know, it may have been in November in 1970, it may have been 1968, or whenever Rekka was actually there. But it doesn't help. Like, if it's true, then he can't be Cooper because he's in Clay Elum. If it's not true, then they lose their only witness. So it's, you know, I have no reason to doubt him.
That's a good.
Rekka lived in the area.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that and we've actually got a guy on the drop zone who's actually, there's a guy on the drop zone who is actually, the Clay Elum newspaper basically is not online anywhere. So there's a guy on the drop zone today who put in a request. He has some kind of library compact thing where he gets microfilm of papers. I asked him, I said, will you get the November and December 71 Clay Elum paper? And he's doing it because I'd like to see if there's a report of this sort of thing happening. My belief currently is that, Jeff Osadich is his name. Yeah. I don't think he's lying. I mean, I don't think he's a liar, I mean, he seems like a nice guy. My belief is that he did see somebody. I don't think he saw Rekka. I think that a pilot ran out of gas or something, okay, and had to make an emergency landing near Cle Elum on the night of the hijacking, and walked into town and got a ride and made a phone call or whatever to somebody, right? And I think that Rekka overheard this guy at some VFW hall or somewhere at some point saying, man, I ran out of gas on the night of the hijacking and I was wearing a suit and I walked into town. I bet them folks thought I was DB Cooper. You know, and Rekka, you know, co-opted this story into his own narrative, right? You know, because, I mean, why would Rekka even say Cle Elum, right? Well, I mean, why would he even, I mean, what the hell is that, right? Why would you even think about that? And so I think it's because I mean, it's almost like Rekka didn't, it's almost like Rekka, if you listen to the way he talks, it's almost like, but no, this is a guy who's never done any research on Cooper at all, okay?
Yeah.
It's almost like he thinks that no one knows where he jumped, right? The way he tells the story. I mean, it's like he doesn't know that we know where Cooper roughly jumped. So I think he co-opted this guy's story. But like you said, I mean, Rekka did live in the area, right, at some point in the late 60s, early 70s. Is that right?
Yeah, and my assumption is always that there's a DUI involved. I live in a rural area. There's a lot of DUIs. I have picked up people who have been in accidents who were clearly drunk and they were just wandering the interstate.
Really?
And I couldn't tell you what year that was, but I remember the kid, and he was completely drunk, and
that's
you know,
a good
got him
way.
off the interstate.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, it's a good way.
like
But yeah, I've had some strange encounters before with people.
Yeah.
And I couldn't tell you what year it was. That's good. That's a fair. Although the fact that they found, yeah, I guess, I mean, it is weird that, I mean, part of me wants to think it was Rekka who this guy interacted with, right? It just wasn't the night of the hijacking. But like you said, the thing about it is when your star witness essentially disproves your case, so he adds nothing. Like, it's almost like they didn't think through that properly. So there's Rekka. So okay, so it's your turn. Who we got?
Okay.
The Unabomber. Okay. There you go, Joe. That's for you, Joe. The Unabomber. So how could Ted Kaczynski have been DB Cooper?
Well, he needed money. Yeah, he was living in Montana. I think Georgia is the one who kind of brings up Ted Kaczynski every once in a while. He looks a little bit like the sketch. He's definitely not in his right mind. And if there's anyone who had the capability of engineering this with just their mind, Kaczynski is one of them. I mean, he was a brilliant mathematician, and he had all the time in the world to think about stuff, and he had a grudge against the airlines. So not the greatest choice, but it's someone he was mechanically inclined to, because he was making bombs. So who knows? Maybe that was his time.
Yeah. Okay. I'll attack Ted. I think Kaczynski has too much hair. I mean, 25 years later, in 96, he's arrested. He's got like a shocking, badass amount of hair. So, I mean, Cooper's hairline was receding. He was balding, according to Alice Hancock. I don't know if that means a bald spot or what, but he was balding. He is 5'8". I think Kaczynski's a little small. Now, I mean, Kaczynski did wear shoe lifts, I believe. He had some kind of things. I don't like his chin. I think he's too square jawed. If there's one thing about Cooper that the witnesses are very consistent on, it's olive skin and it's narrow face. I mean, even Nancy House gives basically no description of Cooper except to say he had a narrow face. That's all she remembers. I believe, it might be Michael Cooper has said that his only memory really of Cooper is that it looked roughly like what the sketch is, a narrow face. Ted does not have a narrow face. Ted has a very square face. It's kind of like Rekka's face, right? His nose he has a bulbous nose. I mean, Cooper's nose is thin. It's not it's not the Bing sketch type of thin, but it's thin. We know that his nose was thinner than McCoy's because we've got Florence Schaffner seeing a picture of McCoy and saying Cooper's nose was thinner than that. And I would say that Ted Kaczynski's nose is bigger than Richard McCoy's nose, wider, flatter, kind of bulbous a little bit. Josh Bernstein, I don't know what Kaczynski's voice sounded like. I mean, he says Kaczynski had a high-pitched voice. I don't recall ever hearing audio of Ted Kaczynski talking. I'm sure there must be. No, Cooper had a low voice. He spoke low, according to the witnesses. So, what what's weird is that Dennis Lenz, in the interview, the next day, Dennis Lenz gives an interview with the Oregonian, and he says that Cooper had a pleasant voice. What about that? Pleasant voice. What a weird adjective to use for a man. Why, how would he? I mean, and why would he even remember that? Which is, by the way, Dennis Lenz. I found this out writing my book. Dennis Lenz flew 50 missions on a B-17 in World War II. How about that? I know. So I was like, whoa. Dennis Lenz was in the 15th Air Force, which was what my grandfather was in. But he flew 50 missions. I believe he was a tail gunner on a B-17, according to his obituary. And he had been with the airline. He had been with Northwest Airlines since 1946. So as soon as he's back from the war, Dennis Lenz joins Northwest Airlines. And it's weird because it's like you're thinking that like a ticket agent is just some guy who has a job, right, with the airline, right? You wouldn't think that a lifer would be the ticket agent, right? That surprised me to learn that about Lenz, that he had been there for that long. I mean, I know Hal Williams hadn't not been with Northwest very long, but Dennis Lenz did. It almost makes me wonder if I wish he was alive. It almost makes me wonder if Dennis Lenz wasn't his regular gig, was being the ticket agent. Like he just was, there. I mean, he ran the booth he ran all the guys there. He's like the manager of the ticket office. Because I believe Bill Mitchell said that it wasn't Dennis Lenz who, I don't know how he would know that, but for some reason, I believe Bill Mitchell has said that it was not Dennis Lindsay who did his ticket. But yeah, Kaczynski, look, if Ted was older, if Kaczynski had been 40 years old, possible. Like you said, he had the brains to do it for sure. It's not, there are worse suspects. I would say, look, Ted Kaczynski's a better suspect than Walter Rekka. But you are, I am a better suspect than Walter Rekka. So, okay. So my turn to defend. Who we got? Who's this? Oh, well, that's not fair. Okay. Milton Voral. Okay. Voral is, I would say that he is the best suspect that has yet been devised by the tie particles alone. I don't know of his age is obviously a problem, but I would say that Milton is, I don't believe that Milton was in his right mind all the way. I don't think he was, I think he was obviously a genius. Voral was somebody, look, the profile of Cooper literally says, the FBI, subject manifests extreme inventiveness. Okay, so, and Milton Voral is an inventor. It's kind of the same argument with Ted Kaczynski a little bit. And what's interesting too is if you read Voral's writings, the very first thing that, maybe you said it too, a bunch of people have said it. When I first started sending Voral's writings around to people, and I know Tessa definitely did. Tessa definitely did. And I was like, holy shit, I had the same idea. She's like, this is like Unabomber stuff. Like, this is so over, it's like, if you try to read something that Ted Kaczynski wrote, it's proper English. like, you know, it's written properly. It's not like it's bad. It's not like you're reading William Faulkner or something, you know, where the grammar is just thrown out the window. It's grammatically correct, but it doesn't really make sense. You know, it's like so lofty. It's like his brain was so above everybody else. I mean, and Verdal's writings are like that a lot of ways. He was so smarter than everybody. But, you know, Verdal had a wicked side too. You know, Verdal abandoned his wife and 7-year-old daughter for the babysitter and never spoke to them again except for like one other time. I mean, that is people might do that today, but in 1947 when he did this was just not done really. I mean, that was that was done, but it wasn't, you know, I mean, it was a little different. Milton looks, I mean, look, Milton has the pouty lip in spades. Milton's lip looks identical to every Cooper sketch, essentially. His skin is a little dark. He knew the area very well. Verdal is somebody who lives close enough to the area to know the area, but is not so close to where people would recognize him. And I think that's a thing that, you know, but whenever we deal with a suspect who lives close to Portland, we have to understand that is that only a maniac would hijack a plane where they're from, right? I mean, the chance of somebody spotting you in the airport is too high. Look, even Martin McNally, you know, Mac drove all the way to St. Louis to hijack an airplane. And in the St. Louis airport, a buddy of his from the Navy recognized him and says, "Hey, Mac." He was like, "Are you kidding me? Like, I'm spotted in the airport about to hijack a plane in St. Louis. I'm from Detroit, right? What are the odds?" So, you know, so he lives close enough to, you know, the area. He grew up in the area. Well, he's lived in Seattle. I mean, you know, the area for a while. I think that obviously he was unemployed at the time. He was unemployed. His Milton Verdal's his factory that he worked at had been shut down in August 29th of 71. Titanium was it TMCA, his company, Timet, had been shut down. So he knew the area pretty well. So obviously, I will not say that Verdal is Cooper. Low probability. Again, every suspect that we can name literally is a low probability, to be honest. But he's a high enough. I think. Look, we spent months and months and months and months and months chasing every son of a bitch who we could find who might have had access to these particles. And Verdal is the only one who hit all of our beats, really, that we wanted. So I think he is the best, as an avenue of investigation, he's the best suspect that the tie can so far has produced. Your turn.
So my criticism is the same. I wouldn't expect a PhD level metallurgist to be the tie owner. I think it's further down the hierarchy. I said that with Peterson. But my problem with Verdal, and I guess this has been the hope, is that if we could track down someone who matched to the tie, something would leap out at us and say, "This is the guy. He was in the 82nd Airborne World War II," or "This is the guy. He was, you know, he was living next door to Elsinore Paris Center and was known to hang out there." Just something, one little thing that would just pop out and say, you know, a direct connection to either the hijacking or skydiving or some kind of money thing. Just anything that connect them to the case, and that's not there. Everything is circumstantial, and everything is based on the tie and how he looks. I mean, I can tell you've done a lot of work on those sketches because you keep you have more confidence in the sketches than I do. So I'm a little like, okay, yeah, he is. To me, he is a good match, but it doesn't mean much to me. I want something. I want, you know, a picture of him wearing a skinny tie with a pearl. A pearl tie clip.
Yeah. I mean,
Just
look,
something.
and I would say too that the holes in, the issues with Verdal really are that, you know, he has no known parachute experience at all. I mean, and I almost cannot comprehend in my brain that DB Cooper did not have some parachute experience. Again, I use this scenario all the time, hypothetical. I have never been scuba diving. Okay, I don't know anything about scuba diving. I don't even like swimming. I would never, ever, 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 ever invent a heist that involved a scuba diving escape. Right? When I mean, my brain would not even like think of that. Right? I would never even like conceive of that. You can say, well, the copycats like Mac had never been on a parachute, but again, Mac wasn't the first. Mac was a copycat. It's one thing to be the Beatles, and it's another thing to be the Monkees or whatever. So Milton, that we know, never been a parachutist. I think that's a big one there. No military experience. I tend to think that Cooper had military experience. I tend to think that Cooper was a pilot of some sort, and there's no indication that Milton was a pilot of any sort. So, all right, so your turn. Let's see who we got. He's running out of people. Let's see. You've got, look at there, Bill Hinman. Good luck.
I don't even consider this guy a suspect, but I know Flydeck does.
Well,
okay, so you have the swarthy appearance. Witnesses said that they thought that Cooper was, Mexican. I think that was Gregory who said that, or was a certain percentage Mexican. Yep. Hanneman, he committed the same crime later, and he also got away with it. Cooper did ask to go to Mexico. Hanneman was trying to go down further south where he felt comfortable. I don't know exactly why he would jump into Portland when they'd have to have a stop in Reno. But, as far as copycats go, there are some photos that of Hanneman that do kind of look like Cooper.
Yeah.
I think to me, the biggest thing is that he wasn't mentally well, but he was capable of, thinking this problem through. He was a smart-ish guy.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
I'll just close my piece there.
Well, I mean, the problem with Hinman.
He had false teeth.
He had what?
He threw some corn in there.
What'd you say?
I said he threw some corn in his teeth so you couldn't see the missing teeth.
Corn. Yeah, no, yeah, Hinman was missing teeth, people. Okay, Hinman was missing multiple teeth on his upper mouth, okay, according to the stewardesses of his hijacking. Honestly, the Flyjack started on Hinman not because of Hinman, but it was because of his brother. I don't know if you remember that. Hinman, Flyjack originally was interested in Hinman's, I believe, younger brother, or maybe his older brother. He had a brother who actually falls off the face of the earth in 1971. Now, I believe Flyjack did find, and I found, just in 5 minutes, that the brother actually died in Honduras in 1974. But the brother did fall off the face of the earth, and the brother was taller than Hinman too. His brother's draft card's 5'11" or something like that. So Hinman's 5'8", okay? And it's funny, Hinman has a Mississippi connection. Hinman was a Mississippian. He was living in Pennsylvania at the time of his hijacking, but Hinman grew up in Mississippi, which is interesting. He's on the coast down south of me. But Heineman's 5'8". I would say that Hinman, I don't like his nose. His nose is rather bulbous. If he was taller, but I mean, every photo of Hinman, he's little. He's a small dude. He's 5'8". I mean, he does seem to, Heineman's definitely olive-skinned. He had the balls to do it, but Hinman acted like a maniac, okay? Clearly mentally ill. Look, folks, Hinman, those don't know about Hinman. Heineman told the crew during his hijacking lasted 20 hours. He was there a long time. He told the crew where his father was from. My dad's from Germany. My mom's from Honduras. He told him where his mom was from. He told him where his dad was from. He told the crew where his dad was buried. When they were going to New Orleans, when they were diverting to New Orleans for a mechanical problem, which wasn't a mechanical problem, it was let's land in New Orleans and maybe the FBI can bail us out. Didn't happen, but they tried. But when they were landing there, he said, "Oh, my dad's buried here," which is true. His dad was buried in New Orleans. So he's like, "Oh, my dad's buried here." Hinman told them all kinds of things. Hinman hijacked a plane in his hometown. Okay, Hinman was from Allentown, Pennsylvania. He hijacked a flight out of the airport in Allentown, which is weird because he had been staying in a hotel, even though he lived in Allentown. He'd been staying in a hotel in Allentown, and was notable in the days ahead of time. The cab driver remembered him and said, "Oh yeah, it was this guy. I knew him. I know who that guy is. He's local." Hinman told the crew he was going to go overthrow the government of Honduras, and Hinman's kind of, his hijacking is really funny. I mean, I'm excited to write the chapter on him in my copycat book. I mean, he's scared to go to New Orleans. He says there's a bunch of he tells one of the stewardesses, "There's a bunch of Cajuns in New Orleans, and the Cajuns are shifty." He says, "I don't trust Cajuns. I don't want to go to New Orleans." But they're like, "Well, we have to land in New Orleans." He goes, "Oh, okay. Well, my dad's buried here." He finds the transponders. They put trackers in his parachutes, and he searched his parachutes and actually found the trackers. And he told he threw them up into the cockpit. I was like, "Oh, I don't need these. Ha ha! You think you're going to track me, But Hinman jumps out. Hinman demanded his money be in 500s and thousands. Okay, so that was weird. It took them like 5 hours to find enough $500 bills to meet his $300,000 demand. Took a while. So Hinman is not. Look, folks, the only person on the planet Earth who thinks that William Frederick Hinman was D.B. Cooper is esteemed researcher Flyjack William Long. I didn't dox him. His name is William Long. We know him. Okay, he did smoke. Hinman asked for $303,000, and I believe it was 2,000 Benson and Hedges cigarettes, which is weird because I told Flyjack, I'm like, "So what, did he hit his head on the way down? They jumped from Flight 305, knock his front teeth out, then suddenly switched from Riley cigarettes to Benson and Hedges 5 months later?" I don't think so. Okay, so my turn to defend. Who am I going to defend? Oh, Lord have mercy. Okay, Dwayne Weber. Okay. Okay. Look, okay. You know what? What's the kid's name? What's Joe's memories, man? Is it Collins?
Collins?
Yeah. Safe cracking PLF. Okay.
Yeah.
So he doesn't participate. Okay. So one of our better Cooper researchers, in my opinion, doesn't play with anybody. He did Tim Collins. That's his name. Tim Collins. Tim Collins is a good researcher. I mean, he's a smart guy. You can tell he knows what he's talking about. Dwayne. Okay, so defend Dwayne Weber. Let's see. Dwayne is 47 years old in 1971, which the FBI, if you read the investigative file, they put Cooper at 48 years old. Okay, they say Cooper is, in their mind, the FBI, they say he's approximately 48 years old is what they think Cooper was. So Dwayne's 47 years old. Apart from Dwayne's ears, he's not a terrible likeness to the descriptions of Cooper. His face is narrow. He does have a narrow face. He was certainly swarthy colored. He had swarthy skin. His hair was marcelled, which is Robert Gregory said his hair was marcelled. He has a pouty lip. Dwayne does have a pouty lip. Dwayne was 6 feet tall, 190 pounds, so a little thicker, a little bigger than Cooper maybe, but 6 foot tall. Dwayne was a legitimate criminal. I mean, there's no doubt about that. He was in and out of prisons his whole life. Dwayne fits the profile of what Himmelsbach wanted. Himmelsbach thought that Cooper was an ex-con, a guy who had been out of prison, who just was a failure in life and said, screw it, I'm going to do something big and grand. So I think Dwayne, look, I would recommend, I think the best Vortex episode that Darren has ever done, I mean, and even though Dwayne's not Cooper, the best Vortex episodes, in my opinion, are the ones with Tim Collins, because you get to hear Dwayne's voice in that. He plays audio of Dwayne talking. You hear Joe on her deathbed, which is really sad. There's audio of Joe on her deathbed basically saying goodbye to Tim Collins. It'll make you cry. It really will. It's very sad. Those episodes of the Vortex are the best for sure. So and honestly, there's a lot more to Dwayne's story than is really talked about. I mean, look, I'll just say this: Dwayne's not Cooper, but Tim Collins makes a good case for it. I'll just say that it's not terrible. So attack Dwayne. Go ahead.
Well, and I agree with you. Those Vortex episodes are my favorite, and it actually kept me awake. He made such a compelling case that I was awake for about 48 hours after, because I listened to him twice, and those are it's like 14 hours of podcast. And I couldn't sleep until I went right back and looked into Dwayne. And unfortunately for Tim, is we have the FBI documents now. So we know exactly what Joe told the FBI in the 90s. And every single thing she told them was either debunked or wrong. Yeah. She said that she had the D rings. Well, the parachutes didn't have D rings. She said that, that he was either in the area or something like that, when we know that he was basically in the Midwest. He had recently changed. He'd gone from like one wife to a girlfriend.
I think he was in Kansas, maybe. Yeah, something like that.
The FBI found the girlfriend and asked her, and she didn't recall him being gone. And the other part about it is that he was already too heavy to be Cooper. She said that this guy's fat. He's not. He doesn't have a slim build. He's too heavy. Which, I mean, and maybe he lost weight temporarily, like a wrestler, cut weight, whatever. I'm willing to because I talked to Joe for so many hours. I mean, I've talked to her for 20, 21, 22 hours over, I don't know, 4 or 5 phone calls. And I like Joe. Yeah. I mean, she was, but nothing she said ever came to fruition. The other, she was convinced that there was money in this van that that she sold, and the FBI followed up on it, and there wasn't anything in the van. So it just everything was a flea circus. It was a house of cards. There was nothing. It was never anything there from the start. Sadly enough, like I said, my favorite. I don't even like debunking Dwayne, because I enjoy those episodes so much. It's so believable.
Yeah, it is.
And I know there's no foundation to it. That's frustrating.
Yeah, if you, like I said, I mean, it's Darren says the same thing. I mean, if Darren said that after hanging out with Tim, he was like, well, shit. I mean, maybe it was Dwayne. I mean, there's a lot there, a lot to unpack. They're great episodes. Tim Collins should be I mean, he should be a storyteller. Like he is a very, very good voice for telling a story. He's a good storyteller. Yeah.
If he did a true crime podcast of just various, I would listen to that. That would be it. That would be the only podcast I would ever listen to, is 5-hour-long Tim Collins podcast about missing people or unsolved crimes, because it was so fantastic. And yeah, it's like I said, it hurts me, because he was so close to Joe. He was closer to Joe than anybody else was, and he was convinced, because Dwayne was the only one that had an explanation for the Tina Bar money fine that made sense to him, and you see that in his YouTube series.
I mean, yeah, and it's, I mean, the thing about Dwayne is that, I mean, she got worse at it the older Joe got. I mean, her mental faculties certainly started to escape her. I mean, she was a very sharp woman. No doubt about that. Joe was very sharp. But, you know, like I say, Dwayne is the Forrest Gump of Cooper. Like, Joe had an explanation for everything. I mean, I guarantee you, if Joe was around when the T-sub came up, you know, she would have had a thing about how Dwayne swept the floors at Rim Crew, right? I mean, literally, that's I mean, for those who are like new Cooper people, that's literally what she would have said, right? I mean, it was that, you know, on the nose of inserting Dwayne into everything, right? I mean, like I said, you know,
CIA.
Yeah, I mean, everything had an explanation. Like I say all the time, the only time I ever spoke to Joe Weber was when she called me up at my office when I was a district attorney, and the secretary said, "Hey, there's a woman on the phone." I was like, "Okay, whatever." And I pick it up and I heard, "Ryan." I was like, yes. I no, immediately it was Joe Weber. And, you know, yeah, she asked me if Dwayne was involved in the assassination of Medgar Evers, who was the NAACP's field secretary, who was murdered in 1963. Yeah, so I was like, no. And here's why I think that you could put a gun to my head, and I would guarantee you that some FBI agent, probably Ing, wasn't Larry for sure, but I think she annoyed Ing so bad that he finally said, "Screw it, come look at the 302s." Has to be, because she had foreknowledge of things that we're now learning through the vault releases, right? Like the Heisen store. Like, there's no way that she would have known about that unless she saw that 302. There's just no way. Or the fact that the guy who assassinated Medgar Evers, the guy who, you know, my office prosecuted him. That's why she called me. It was my office did that, you know, back then. Byron De La Beckwith is his name. Byron De La Beckwith is in the 302s. Okay, what? I would never in a million years think the assassin of Medgar Evers in Mississippi would be in the 302s, but sure enough, he is in the 302s. This guy, and so and the whole thing about, remember her thing about how she says that Dwayne was a cellmate of James Earl Ray, right? Remember, she said that, and so. Yeah, in the 302s, there is some stuff in there about, there's a guy there is some connection. It might be Kofelt. I think it is Kofelt. Yeah, there is a 302 about it's Kofelt. That's what it is. Kofelt said that he was a cellmate at Leavenworth. I don't know where it was. Yeah, he was a cellmate of James Earl Ray, the assassin of Martin Luther King. Okay, and so. Again, for Joe to come up with Heisen, for Joe to come up with Byron De La Beckwith, the assassin of Medgar Evers, to come up with Dwayne being a cellmate of James Earl Ray when there is a cellmate of James Earl Ray in the 302s, right? She saw the 302s. She had to, period. And so, and that gave her a leg up to concoct lies, essentially. But we'll move on from Dwayne. But seriously, you are doing a grave disservice if you care at all about the Cooper case and do not go listen to Tim Collins's episodes on the Vortex. It will make you cry by the end of it. It's like art. It's so good. So anyway, next. Okay, we're running out probably of suspects. All right, so let's see. Okay, so it's your turn. You've got Ted Braden. Freaking fastball down the middle, man. That's not hard.
Man. Like the most qualified guy in all of Cooperdom.
Yep.
Like the one guy who would have known about the 727. He had the skill set. He had the swarthy complexion. He had the military background. Had the exact background that we would think. He was criminally minded. And if you want a connection with the tie, we now have pictures of these truckers. He was working for a trucking company at the time, and they wore ties, and they had to clip them to their shirts. And he would have been exposed as a trucker to all kinds of things. And I believe he was working out of Pittsburgh, wasn't he, or working out of Pennsylvania somewhere,
Ohio,
where he would have encountered him.
Ohio, very eastern Ohio, which is right next to Pittsburgh. Yeah.
Or at it was a truck, RMI. Maybe who knows where he got it? It's like what garbage can was he hauling? Who knows? There's so much crap on the tie that had to be from multiple areas. With the CRT tubes or the CRT, the red phosphors and all that. He knew, he was familiar with the Pacific Northwest. He traveled in that area. We don't know where he was on that day.
Yeah.
I mean, what's not to like?
Yeah, I mean, I
just read his book.
I called Ted Braden the god of circumstantial evidence, basically, right? I mean, it's
yeah.
I always use it with Ted. I always say, look, if you gave 100 people all the facts of the Cooper case, and you said invent DB Cooper, they'd probably invent Ted Braden. Like I really think that pretty much it. I mean, he is somebody who would have known about the 727's capabilities. He obviously, I mean, Ted legitimately, for all of Rekha's bullshit about working for the CIA and the KGB and Mossad and MI6, Braden actually did it. Braden actually was a CIA operative in later life, perhaps even. I mean, somehow Braden keeps escaping. Like, it's bizarre. You'll see Ted Braden be arrested and charged with some major felony, and then just goes away, just vanishes into thin air. Never. I mean, I've spent untold hours on. I mean, I'm a lawyer. I have access to U.S. court things, because I pay a lot of money for this stuff. I can't find anything on these arrests. You see him in newspapers.com, and he's arrested for $200,000 of stealing whatever. Then, and it's almost like that. It's almost a scenario where he gets arrested, and it's almost like in Rambo when the colonel shows up and it's like, all right, we got a job for you to do. I mean, literally, we'll let you out, but you got to go do this job. Because, Ted Braden is spotted in Nicaragua and Panama in the 80s. I mean, bona fide people saying, yeah, he was there doing stuff. The only, I would say, to attack Ted is the height, I guess. He's a smaller guy. Ted was 43 at the time, so he's perfect age, really. And Ted probably looked older anyway, because Ted, his military service certainly would have made him more weathered looking for being outdoors for years. God, Ted's almost perfect, almost too perfect, really, in some ways. But my theory on Ted, here's my problem. And I've told Drew this. I mean, I have supported Voral. I have supported Braden publicly. I mean, I'm probably, behind Drew and Lisa. I mean, I'm probably, to this day, even probably the third most prominent Ted booster there is. I still like Ted Braden a hell of a lot. I mean, my issues, if I had to attack Ted, would be his height is a problem. 5'8's too short. Ted was a small little wiry guy. Cooper's a little bigger than that, but shoe lifts, I don't know. And I would say that I have a hard time believing that Ted was not a suspect immediately. I mean, he was a known problem, by the government at the time, because his Ramparts article came out in '69. And Ted exposed McVie-Sogg to the world. Okay, he was so pissed off about McVie-Sogg that he wrote a whole article on Ramparts, which was a left-wing magazine. And I mean, there were congressional hearings launched because of Ted Braden's, article. Congress was like, what is this program? We're doing what in Cambodia? You say Laos? We shouldn't be doing this. We don't want to start World War III. So it's almost like surely Ted Braden was a very early suspect, and his photos would have been shown to the stewardesses at least. However, I've asked Larry Carr, about Ted Braden, and he has no memory. He says, no, I have never heard the name Ted Braden until recently. He said, I never saw the name Braden in the files. I never dealt with it. But we do have evidence, though. If you recall, there is evidence. There is a guy who's alive. He's getting older, but he remembers being asked about Ted Braden at a North Carolina drop zone. He was a former MACV-SOG guy. And him and a bunch of other guys were sport jumping after their service had ended in North Carolina. And he remembers, he says it was early 72, 2 FBI guys showing up at the drop zone saying, hey, what do you know about Ted Braden? And they said, well, and this guy said, well, Braden was after my time. And this guy had been SOG, MACV-SOG in 68, 69. Braden was there in 65, 66. He's like, but we knew who Ted Braden was. And he told the FBI, well, I do know some people who do think Ted Braden is Cooper. He told them that in 72. So, I mean, already in 72, MACV-SOG guys, were thinking it was Ted, and they still do. I mean, if the military veterans had to vote on DB Cooper, it'd be Ted Braden. So, yeah, God, man. I mean, a lot of things fit on Ted Braden, a whole lot. But it would almost be impossible to convince me that he wasn't DB Cooper if Ted Braden had been 5'11". If he's a little bit taller, I'd be like, this is done, clearly. I mean, but anyway. All right. So my turn. We're getting near the end here, I think. All right, my turn. I have to defend. Wait, I keep putting the stupid things back in there. Okay, I have to defend. Who's this? William J. Smith. Okay. Well, that's really more your avenue there as a Gunther person. Yeah. Okay, but actually, I think you'll have some good takes on. I think you'll have a good take on William J. Smith because you're a Gunther guy. To defend William J. Smith, I think he had a grudge against I mean, I guess he had a grudge against the airlines. At the time, there was a lot of strikes going on with longshoremen and with railroad guys at the time. He had aviation experience. He was in Navy aviation. He was a photographer, I believe, which means he was good at like looking around at things. He was good at observing from altitude. I mean, he's somebody who could have dead reckoned where he was pretty well. He had that kind of training. He looks a lot like the sketch. I mean, if you look at, I think his nose is a little big, but he looks like, obviously, I mean, I think Voral and William J. Smith are our two best sketch comps. Although I would say that Don Burnworth looks so much like Bing, it's painful. Don Burnworth is good for Bing, right? But William J. Smith, I do know that he did have some mental illness. I mean, I don't want to step on Dave's toes on that, but he had some problems mentally. He's the right age. William J. Smith was 43 at the time. He had certainly had olive skin. He was Hungarian. I think he was Hungarian. I think it's Hungarian. I forget his real name. It was like William, something crazy. It was like, some Eastern European name. He changed his name to Smith. But yeah, that's William J. Smith. So like I said, you are the Gunther guy, and this is a Gunther topic. So go ahead.
No, okay. What color was the parachute?
White.
Well, according to Gunther.
According to Gunther, it was what, green and white or something? Orange and white, maybe? Green and white?
Well, it was yellow and red.
Oh, red, okay.
But so the problem is the Gunther connection, right? So I mean, William J. Smith, yeah, we can say that we can make a connection, lots of connections actually, between Gunther and William J. Smith. But can we make any connections between Gunther and DB Cooper?
No. No, not at all. I mean, there's too much. No, I don't. I mean, as much as Gunther's enjoyable, I mean, there's too much wrong there. I mean, again, I don't know where, I mean, like Gunther writes that, I mean, the narrative is so screwed up with Gunther that it's almost, you almost can't, I mean, you almost put it down immediately if you're a Cooper sleuth. You're like, this isn't right. I mean, I believe Gunther has Captain Scott going back and saying, show me this bomb. We know that didn't happen. The parachute's the wrong color. Like I said, I think you and I are looking into whether Gunther may have been the timing of Gunther's book with some of the Kofelt stuff. Like there is some sort of crossover there between Kofelt article.
There's one direct link between Kofelt, the Kofelt Las Vegas story, and Gunther, which is a little disconcerting for me.
What was it? Do you remember?
I wrote it down. I haven't had. I mean, I've got a toddler, so
yeah.
I don't have a lot of free time to go into this stuff.
Well, no, I mean, I remember that. I may have remembered the same thing because I remember reading when I read that Las Vegas article. I was like,
it may have been the parachute.
Yeah,
maybe the color of the parachute.
There's something that's so on the nose that you're like, oh, did Gunther or did the hoaxer? I mean, I don't know. I don't think Gunther. I think Gunther was hoaxed. I don't. I mean, what's your belief on that?
No, I have spoken to people who knew Gunther, and if Joe was accurate in that Joe said that she knew Max, then I've spoken to two people who say they knew Max, but the other one is a journalist that I interviewed with, and he said that Max was completely convinced. He was actually concerned about the book, not because he made it up, but because it ruined it. I mean, it was ruining his reputation. That people were being very unfair with it. He was just writing down a story that he was told, and he was attacked for it and vilified for it. And he was, however, still convinced that it was Cooper that he was talking to in '72, and he was convinced that it was an accurate story. So I would take Gunther at his word. He was a relatively reputable journalist, so he'd have to have been hoaxed. But the question is, where did the hoaxer get their information from? Because there's a lot of interesting stuff there too.
Yeah, and it's just and why did the hoaxer go to the levels that they went to? Like, when I pulled that Clara letter out of Himmelsbach's stuff, I'm like, what the hell? I mean, like, this person sent a letter to Himmelsbach too? Holy crap. Like, I thought that was a myth. I thought that was like, but I mean, why would they do that? Like, who? It's, I mean, we've got, like, honestly, we've got three mysteries that I'd like to see. We've got the Tina Barr mystery, we've got Gunther, and we've got Cooper himself. I mean, I think these are three things that are really. I mean, I would love to know who did this to Gunther. I mean, because and why would this person go to the lengths to convey this story to Himmelsbach? It's just like, what the hell is this? So. But yeah, there's no.
Yeah, and the person Gunther talked to, they knew a lot of details about skydiving that didn't make the book, but were accurate to the time. They knew about the Elsinore investigation, and the thing was, it didn't look like they had read the FBI, the Los Angeles files on the actual interviews with Cameron. So, because it's a little different, like what Gunther wrote down and what is in the FBI files is just different enough to come from different witnesses. And obviously, how did Gunther get a chemical salesman? A person who was in that industry that was connected directly with the tie particles. That's why we even talk about Gunther now, is because of those actual connections to things that we didn't know about 5 years ago. So it is actually a big mystery, even though, like, the color of the parachute and Captain Scott coming back, and that's in the Clara letter too, that are the Gunther notes that we have now, that the person was claiming those things happened, which we know didn't. So it's really frustrating. Like, it's the worst rabbit hole to be in, other than the Cooper case itself.
Yeah, because there are things that make you question it. that question like, it's weird. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's just a strange thing. So, all right. So let's see. We're empty. Just we're empty. So cool.
No,
So
no Jack Scott Farmer, no Fred Catalano, no
no
Langseth.
no Langseth, no Catalano. Although wait, I have to have one more. Where'd he go? That's not right. I did have one more. I printed off one more, so we'll do one more. And it's your turn to say what. Yeah, Kenny was in here too. I had Kenny Christensen.
Oh, okay.
I mean, so okay, so I don't know where he is, but there you go. You do Kenny Christensen.
So Kenny is a better suspect than people give him credit for. He was a paratrooper. He collected coins. I mean, he had a very expensive hobby, and he didn't have the income for it. If there's anyone that would understand the 727, it would be a purser like he was, and he would have picked up other things too, being a purser. So he's not a terrible suspect. If he wore a toupee of some kind to cover up his baldness, I think it's a possibility. People don't take it seriously because they don't take the author of the book seriously, and I shall not speak his name for fear of summoning. But
for summoning him, he was apparition.
Kenny Christensen deserves better than that individual.
Okay, yeah, okay. So the problem with Kenny, the biggest problem with Kenny to me is he ran the very real risk of hijacking an aircraft where the stewardesses knew who he was. I mean, possibly. Now I know that they ran different routes. I know he did, he did he flew in the Orient, and these people, were, but Kenny could not have known the crew. I don't think so. I don't think he could have known the crew complement that day, right? I mean, for example, Tina wasn't even supposed to be on that trip, I don't think. It's my understanding is that, maybe I'm wrong on that, but I feel like maybe that Tina's roommate or something was like, I mean, I look into that, but I feel like that Tina wasn't supposed to be on that flight for some reason. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but Kenny's small. Kenny's 5'9", a little small, bald. Apparently did not like parachuting. We have letters. He was in the airborne. He was a paratrooper in World War II, but we've got letters where he's like writing home saying how terrified he is of jumping out of planes and how he regrets being a paratrooper, which is funny. It's like, oh, I made a bad decision. But why would you, would he have trouble lowering the aft stairs, right? He apparently didn't trust his own ability to lower the stairs without Tina explaining it to him. A 727 person.
There's no, like, you gotta be just messing with her. Like, oh, how does this work? I don't understand this.
Yeah, maybe playing dumb. I
don't work for this airline. I don't know what to do.
Yeah, maybe playing dumb for sure.
That doesn't seem.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, he is not as bad. Yeah, I agree. I mean, he's not as terrible as some other suspects, but
here's another thing. And I found this when I was going through the archives of Northwest. They changed their hijacking policy. So in the manual that they gave flight attendants, they had changed the hijacking policy, which is something that Kenny Christensen would have known. And I forget exactly the exact details about it, but he would have known exactly what their policies and procedures were that they had just changed. And interestingly enough, the pilots did not follow that policy during the hijacking. So that's
what was
I think
policy?
In fact, it was in flux enough that would be the time to commit that crime.
What was the policy you're talking about?
No, so if you were a flight attendant and someone says that they're hijacking an aircraft, the manual tells you what to do, and it was confidential. I wasn't allowed to take a photo of it, even though it's from 50 years ago. But I took notes on it, and the flight attendants had specific duties to do, and the pilots and the flight crew had specific duties to do during the hijacking, and they basically didn't follow it. It was something I was going to write about, but again, I just had a kid, and he's a toddler, he's a mess, and I haven't slept in about a year and a half now. So
let's see. So, what do you think? Because I don't have the card. I had a card for this guy. I don't know where he is. What do you think of Lee Seller?
Whoa. I have no clue who that is.
Lee Seller is the one, the missing person from Seattle who dropped his kids off and never came back. He was the bomber pilot. He was the bomber pilot in World War II, Canadian.
Yep. Okay, I remember someone contacting me about this.
Me.
Was it you?
Well, I posted about him on the Facebook group. Okay, well, I'll talk about it.
Yeah. No, someone messaged me. I don't know if it was you or if it was Nikki or I get a lot of messages from you people. So God bless you all. I don't have time to read them. But yeah, I've looked into it a little bit. I'm like Bruce. You know, Bruce used to get a new suspect every week for years and years and years, and I was the same way. I got new suspects every week for years and years and years. Like I just don't like it. You have to really pound my head to get me to register a new suspect, but I do recall it.
Yeah. So yeah, I like Lee Seller. You know, Lee was a bomber pilot in World War II. Flew a bunch of missions in Europe. Came back, had several failed marriages. Was, I believe, maybe a single dad. His wife had died. He had 2 teenage kids that he one day just, and I think in 1970, maybe early 70, I'm not sure what year it was, dropped his kids off at his parents' house in Seattle and was never seen again. Just gone. And very nerdy kind of guy. He was 5'11", the right size. He had dark skin, had an olive complexion. You know, Larry Carr was intrigued by him because Larry likes the idea of a dead Cooper, and you know, this is a possibly dead Cooper, you know, who's never seen again, who is, you know, and he lived in Vancouver too. I mean, he had lived in Vancouver in the early '60s, Vancouver, Washington. So he knew Vancouver, Washington. He knew Seattle because he was living there at the time. He had been committing bank fraud at the time. In 70, 71, he was basically creating fake bank accounts and stealing money. The family of this guy remembers the FBI coming around in 1972 to their house in Washington, up near Seattle. Now they're not sure if they were asking about the hijacking because they were kids. They were teenagers at the time. One of his daughters I won't say where she lives, but one of his daughters, one of his sons, his son is, I believe, a mayor of a Canadian town currently. His daughter is a professor at a major college in Canada. So his kids are well adjusted, but they were teenagers at the time, but they remember the FBI coming around in 72-ish or so. But they thought it was in connection with his bank fraud stuff, which Larry, I believe one of the relatives reached out to Larry Carr and said, you know, would y'all have been investigating bank fraud? They said, possibly, you know, it depends on various things. But no, I like Lee. He wore glasses. That's the only issue is, well, we have photographs of him with glasses and him without glasses. So he did have some vision problems, but how bad those vision problems were. But, you know, Lee's a good suspect. So the couple ones, I don't know where they are, but my dark horse suspect is Melvin Wilson. I think there is, the fact that Melvin Wilson had just been indicted for counterfeiting $200,000 3 months earlier is strangely on the nose, right? And was on the run from the cops. Desperate individual. Melvin Wilson's 43 years old. Looks like the sketch, olive skin. His eyes, Vicky, I talked to Vicky, his daughter. Melvin Wilson's listed as having blue eyes. But Vicky was only 7 when her dad disappeared. She asked her mom, what did my dad's eyes look like? I don't really remember them. And the mom said, your dad's eyes were so blue that they looked black. So he had very, very black blue eyes. Melvin shows up 2 months later after the hijacking in Canada, claiming to be a furloughed airline pilot, which is interesting. Melvin's my dark horse. Like I said, he has no ties to aviation, which is a problem, a major problem. But what do you think about Mel?
So originally, I thought we had eliminated Mel, 10 years ago, 8 years, whatever it was, 2016 or whenever, because we had these are discussions that were had on forums a long time ago, that Mel went probably to Las Vegas. He got tapped into the organized crime that he had connections to and began forging money again. So to see him not do that and suddenly appear in that area and alive, by the way, because we thought that he would have been just murdered in Las Vegas or something, and by the mob or whatever, trying to keep him quiet. We assumed that he would back into that kind of crime life because he had nothing when he left, other than the clothes on his back and maybe a couple of fake 20s. So to have him come back like this is really challenging, because you're looking for the magic, like the silver bullets, and all the silver bullets went away. So I really like Mel Wilson. I wish there was some other way that connected to the case, but I think that the fact is very exciting that Vicky was able to find siblings with genetic testing. That's something that I really pushed for Dick Lepsy. Not that I knew the family at all, but I think Dick Lepsy, who went missing, and there's another book on him, connecting him very thinly to the Cooper case. That the people have got to get their DNA into these databases and find relatives, because like my family had a very unusual event happen when we did our DNA testing, and we found that my grandfather's sister, who I was told died in infancy, in fact lived out her life in Portugal and had children. We had close relatives in Portugal from my grandfather's supposedly deceased sister.
What?
So it's I've got a picture of her over in the other room. It's insane, but the genetic testing shows that that's the relation that we have with this person. So, like,
wow. Okay.
So it's that's just insane. So and the Mel Wilson story is that insane too. I always thought he was such a smart guy, like sly.
Yeah.
For a criminal, he was very sly.
Con man.
And that fits to me, in my mind. That really fits Cooper. So I'm with you. I'm kind of like the Scrooge of suspects. I like to poke holes in things, but there are suspects that survive my scrutiny, and Mel, after so many years, he survived it, so he's back in the mix.
Yeah. I'm the same way. I mean, Melvin, like I said, I'm the same way. I like killing suspects, but Mel's, I mean, really what you've got, the only problem, I mean, literally, the only issue you can have with Melvin Wilson is aviation experience, right? Now, but again, we don't know that about Cooper, right? We don't, that's a supposition. It's a good assumption, but it's not, again, he's a smart guy. Maybe, to me, Melvin Wilson is a good guy who saw Paulsini's hijacking and was like, oh, I can do that or something. And I feel like Melvin Wilson is a Paul Cini copycat hijacker.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to have the idea, right? Because I don't think it would be Melvin's idea, but I think that and here's a guy who, you know, I don't know, man. When the FBI's after you for counterfeiting money, or the State Department, whoever they are, the Secret Service is after you, you're probably pretty desperate, you know, and maybe thinking you're on your wits' end and you're about to be dead anyway, maybe, or whatever. I don't know, you know. No, Melvin Wilson's a great suspect, and he gets forgotten for what, I don't know why. I mean, he shouldn't. He deserves to be. He's an A-tier suspect, honestly. I mean, he's got a couple things. Catalano is. See, that somebody asked about Catalano. We don't know enough about Catalano. It's the problem. I mean, I have FOIA'd for his suspect file. So something about him irks the FBI. You know, Ralph Hope, who is still alive. I'm trying to contact Ralph Hope. Ralph Hope is who went who went through all 1,000 suspects and pulled out Jason Langseth and pulled out Fred Catalano as people he wanted to know more about. So clearly there's something in his subject file which we've not read, right? About him. I don't know what it is, but something made Ralph Hope a, you know, smart agent. Consider him special. Like I said, but we don't know what it is, Sonia. Like I said, we have very limited files on him. We know that he was a purser who had trained as a pilot. He actually had pilot training to be a commercial airline pilot. So he had gone through the training. He knew how to fly a commercial airliner. But he was a purser, so he probably felt insulted at his position. And Robert Gregory picked his photo out as saying this looks like Cooper. He said that he could not eliminate Fred Catalano. Gosh, the other one, I think that's pretty much it. So, I mean, we haven't mentioned Rackstraw, which I don't care to mention Rackstraw. I mean, look, the thing about Rackstraw is if Rackstraw was 40 years old at the time, yeah, sure. I mean, because Rackstraw is kind of like Braden in some ways, where he's got everything you want. I mean, this is a guy who's not afraid to commit major crimes, major crimes. And he had the knowledge, I would think, and the ability, and it's hard to get over being 27 years old and looking like he looked when we have the photograph of him a month before the hijacking. That can't be Cooper. He's just too young and too handsome of a guy. I don't care if he's wearing makeup or not. I mean, the whole makeup argument is bogus. I mean, look, every hijacker who wore makeup, they were called out for wearing makeup. You know, it was obvious. You know, McCoy was obviously wearing makeup. So, what's your take on Rackstraw? I guess, right?
So I was deferred to the original investigation done by the FBI. So with Rackstraw, we know that they contacted people or a person who was living with Rackstraw, probably the live-in girlfriend at the time, and he wasn't missing. He wasn't gone a night during the 6-month period where the hijacking took place. And he was working at Radio Shack. He was very bored at that period in time in his life. There just wasn't much going on. And he just trusts that the girlfriend would know if this guy came in one night bloodied and limping and tired and hungry, like Cooper would have been on Thanksgiving of all times.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, he, like I said, I mean, he's got a lot going for. Also, nothing too. You know, we're really, I mean, you read the FBI files, they are damn near positive that they've got Cooper's palm print. I mean, they're real solid on that. I mean, they went overboard trying to get palm prints from suspects because they felt very confident. Cooper likely wiped. I don't think he wiped. I think Cooper probably did something to his fingerprints to disguise them. I mean, he knew that enough that the fingerprinting was what they did. Fingerprinting was the DNA of the time, essentially, right?
Yeah.
And so a knowledgeable criminal is going to do that. Some people, I mean, most like Mac wore gloves, McCoy wore gloves, but still left some prints. Hinman wore white gloves. I mean, you know, they wore gloves because they knew that fingerprinting was how they catch you. So I think Cooper did disguise his fingerprints, but he didn't disguise his palm print because in that era, no one took palm prints. Like I mean, in my book, I write about how it wasn't until 2003 or so that the NYPD and the LAPD started palm printing people during arrests. The military, I asked Feudman, I believe, the military still does not palm print people. Okay, so I mean, no one's palm printed unless you ask for it. And they got Rackstraw's palm prints, and his palm print didn't match. So I mean, that's another thing too. Yeah. So anyway, I like a suspect. Drew's asking me about the Tomb Suba guy. That's a teaser for my book, I guess. I know who he is. I figured out his name. I know who he is. He is a really good suspect. He freaked the FBI out because when they found him in Mississippi in 1984, they finally found this guy. When they approached him, they said, these are Mississippi agents writing a teletype to Seattle. And they're saying, when we approached him and said we're with the FBI, the first thing he said was, "Oh, is this about the hijacking?" Before they even like brought it up. And so that really unnerved them. They're like, "Oh, what the hell?" So, and in fact, he was so good, even though his fingerprints didn't match, the FBI, there's an FBI document where they go, "Well, we're not convinced these are Cooper's prints anyway." You know, so like they don't eliminate him. So I don't know why they eliminated this guy. I have FOIA'd for his file. We'll see. But you know, this is a guy who was, he had been a smoke jumper in the 60s. He was living in Seattle at the time. Okay. He was from Delaware originally. He was a grifter. Or a drifter. He moved around town. He had no home really. Apparently looked a lot like the sketch. The FBI Mississippi, their message back to Seattle is, this guy looks like the sketch to us. He really does. He was 43 at the time, I think. Had been a smoke jumper, you know, had been a pilot, I believe. He wore a black clip-on tie at his job in 71 in Seattle, they found out. Which is, you know, what else? There's a bunch of other things too, but the FBI liked him a lot. So anyway, okay. One last question. You know, of the suspects we have named, if you had to bet $10 on a suspect, who would your favorite suspect be?
Well, and I hate to feed your ego, but I would go with Verdal, only because, and I get a lot of if you read the reviews on Amazon of my book, people complain that I'm too focused on the tie, but that's the only physical evidence we have. So the tie has an owner, the tie has a history, and because of the unique circumstance, like the unique particles on the tie, we should be able to figure out who owned it, or at least what group of people owned it. So that is absolutely worthy of pursuing, because even if Cooper gets it at a garage sale, Cooper had to be at that garage sale in that town buying from one of those guys. Yeah. And that would tell us, like, oh, okay, Cooper's from, you know, Allentown or Pittsburgh or you know, somewhere in Ohio or something. So I like Verdal. You know, I'm really, if you look at it and say there's 100 million people, 100 million men who spoke English who could have been Cooper, of that 100 million, maybe, you know, 1 out of 1,000 you can create little links to the Cooper case. You know, you really have to get a few factors of 10 down to get a good suspect, and even then you're left with 10. I think there's about 10,000, maybe 100,000 good suspects out there, which is why we keep getting a new suspect every week for the last, I don't know, 50 years. So it's really tough. It's, in all likelihood, we have false positives with Verdal and Peterson, but I really believe that's where most of the effort should go. Because if you get away from there just isn't evidence, and that's the problem with the Cooper case is the lack of physical evidence means that it's not falsifiable,
Yeah.
right? It's not something we can test that we can say this will link this will prove it. We don't have that, and the tie is the only thing that even comes close. So that's my prejudice is towards that, and Voral is the only one that Voral and I guess Peterson, but Voral more is the only one that even comes close.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that if it's not Voral, I think that, I mean, here's the thing about, the titanium antimony is that, I mean, some of the best researchers out there, I know Dave has done it, and I know Flyjack certainly has tried his best to kill the T-sub. I mean, my God, he's tried, but he can't. I mean, nobody can find anybody in the world making titanium antimony alloys other than Milton Voral. They just can't. So if it's not Milton, it's somebody in his orbit, I think, who was a lab tech with him, and I think more likely it would be somebody at TIMET in Nevada than Pittsburgh. I think that's West Coast. It's unemployment, right? I mean, so I would love to do more investigating on TIMET, because if it's not, like I said, it's not Voral, it's somebody, like we have no evidence that Voral did anything with T-sub at TIMET. But again, this is a guy who was Mr. T-sub. So it stands to reason maybe he was still dicking around with it in TIMET, at TIMET in 71 or in 70. So I think if it's not him, it could be somebody who worked tangentially with him, because of the connection of it. But again, I mean, why not him? His age is a problem. But again, I mean, age is hard to tell on people. I mean, so
No, and
personally, I like Voral. I like Braden a lot too. Those are my two guys, I'd say. So anyway, okay. Well, we have gone over. So Marty, thank you for joining me, and we can do something. Hopefully, never do this again. Go through these people,
My apologies. I don't know why it was so hard to clock into this thing.
No.
That was what, 2 hours ago? So
yeah,
no problem.
It was good. I mean, it's
I forgot by now.
Yeah. I mean, it's man, I have a hard time clocking in on this stuff too. It's difficult. So, anyway, okay.
You know what? We should do a Tina Bar episode together.
Look, I mean, let me explain to people this. My book has about 300 pages at this point. There's one chapter left in my book, and it's a Tina Bar chapter. I don't even want to write it. Like, I'm almost tempted to put out a Cooper book without even mentioning Tina Bar. Just I want to give a big middle finger to Tina Bar. Like, just say, you know what? No habla inglés. Here's a 300-page Cooper book with no mention of Tina Bar because I hate it so much. It is evil. Like it is nothing bedevils the mind of man more than Tina Bar. Like it makes no sense. Like nothing about it makes any sense. I hate it. So anyway, all right, guys, peace out. Thank you, Marty, and I appreciate you. Bye, folks.